Now we're going to turn to a massive Wall Street scandal that may have cost Americans billions of dollars, potentially more than Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. It involves everyday American investors pouring their money into what was supposed to be a big boom overseas, only to be in for an expensive shock. Here's ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross with the report.
It is a set of alleged scams and frauds from far away in China that has affected thousands of American investors and their pension funds.
It hurts. It does.
And it strikes at the very credibility of the big stock exchanges, which allowed the Chinese companies to sell their stock here.
Hundreds of billions of dollars still at stake.
Yet when we went to get answers, no one wanted to appear in our report. Not the people at NASDAQ.
This interview's over right now. It's over right now.
Not the prominent general, whose name was used to promote the very companies now accused of scamming investors.
Do you have just a moment, General?
No.
And certainly not some of the accused scammers halfway around the world.
With a fish.
No camera.
What they don't want to talk about is the sort of thing that was going on or not going on at this factory in rural China, where American investors were told huge quantities of biodiesel fuel were being produced every day. But these surveillance photos appear to show something quite different. Only a handful of workers and absolutely no tanker trucks carrying the fuel to market. It was all a lie, according to investor lawsuits and the man who arranged the hidden camera across the street, John Carnes, a so-called short seller who profits when the value of a stock goes down.
I filmed about 4 months, and during that period I found that they produced essentially nothing.
Yet all the time, the company, China Integrated Energy, was selling its stock to unsuspecting American investors on the NASDAQ stock exchange. The company's top executives rang the closing bell 3 years ago.
We are so pleased to welcome China Integrated Energy to the market site today.
But back in China, investors say China Integrated Energy was pulling a fast one. Watch what the photos show on the one day the unwitting American investors were invited to the factory for a tour.
For the first time in 4 months, at 7 in the morning, we see tanker trucks show up. And then at precisely 9:45, the big red bus shows up, and it's full of investors.
They're given a tour and then put back on the bus and driven away.
And the place shuts back down again just like it had been for the 4 months prior.
And in the weeks following the investor tour, anything going on?
Nothing. Just as dead as before.
So this was a complete con job.
Exactly.
China Integrated Energy, which owns 2 other fuel plants, acknowledges there were problems at this factory, but denied there was any fraud. Even so, it is one of some 70 Chinese companies that an ABC News investigation found have been delisted or left NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange because of suspected fraud.
The common theme among the many cases that we've already filed is the brazenness of the fraud. It's quite extraordinary in some instances.
In an interview just before she left as chair of the SEC, Mary Shapiro told ABC News that Chinese scammers feel safe from the reach of American law.
They see themselves as far away geographically.
And she revealed that Chinese officials rejected pleas she made last year in Beijing for help in tracking down the suspected scammers.
You don't have the cooperation you want.
Not right now, no.
The biggest losers have been pension funds and small investors, including truck stop manager Al Smith of Boise, Idaho.
There is no recourse. There's no going back and grabbing anything back.
He says he and his wife lost much of their retirement money, about $60,000, in the stock of a Chinese coal company, Puda Coal, traded on the New York Stock Exchange, that U.S. authorities say had no coal mine.
I'm not a big guy or rich guy, and that's just was pretty tough for us.
The Puda Coal chairman, Ming Zhao, has been living it up ever since with the money officials say he essentially stole from Al Smith and other U.S. investors. When ABC News went to the headquarters of Puda Coal in China,
We're from ABC News.
We were told the chairman had not been seen for months and that no one at the office knew his whereabouts.
Do you know when he'll be back?
I don't know. That's amazing. That's amazing. How can he not at least be under some prosecution for this?
Puda Coal was one of the many Chinese companies that the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ began to aggressively recruit back in 2008, seeing the potential for big profits. NASDAQ executive Bob McCooey went on CNBC to make his pitch for new listings.
We think there's no better place to find them than in China.
But officials say again and again, the stock exchanges, in their rush to get the Chinese business, did a poor job of verifying the financial health of the companies.
I think there was a time when they were not as rigorous as they could have been.
Also coming under scrutiny by the SEC are several big American auditing firms with Chinese subsidiaries, as well as the American middlemen who promoted the Chinese companies with often elaborate presentations.
Those are all gatekeepers that we're very focused on.
One so-called middleman is a company by the name of Rodman & Renshaw, well known for its lavish conferences. In 1 year, 20 of the 40 Chinese companies pitched to investors were later removed from stock exchanges because of allegations of fraud. The company's chairman at the time was retired General Wesley Clark. He told ABC News he can't talk about what happened because the company is being sued.
It's in a court case. It cannot be talked about.
No one from the two big stock exchanges wanted to appear in our report either. But, like the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, in a letter to ABC News, said it had imposed more stringent listing requirements in April of last year, well after at least 40 of the suspected frauds had already been discovered. When we went to NASDAQ to ask how that could happen, an official grew unhappy with our questions.
How do those 40 get on this exchange without some kind of check that reveal there are frauds?
Companies get on exchanges through very... Look, this interview's over right now. It's over right now. What do you mean? I'm walking you out the door.
The Chinese government has now reacted to allegation it was not cooperating with the U.S. In a statement to ABC, it said, quote, groundless accusations will not conduce to our friendly cooperation. Cooperation that U.S. officials say they have yet to see.